our fourth lesson on Ghostwriter, we're going to look at generate code, how we can make entire projects in the click of a button. It is really cool. And I'll be honest, it's how I wrote most of the code for the last two lessons, because I'm not an expert in those languages. So generate code differs from complete code in one obvious respect. It makes an entire file of code in one go. Let's see what we can do with it. The first thing that I like it for is generating the boilerplate code for a commonly used type of development. Now we're in a Python REPL at the moment, and if I wanted to make it into a Flask server, there's a bunch of stuff that I need to add just to even get that going. And to be perfectly honest, 9 times out of 10, what I normally do is I just go, copy the code, and I go and make a Flask REPL, so I've got that boilerplate code there. But with Ghostwriter, you don't need to worry. You simply prompt it to create a Flask server, and in this case, I'm going to ask it to run it on a specific port because I like using it on that port. And it puts the code in that runs it and launches the web server straight away. There's no fuss to that. It generates the boilerplate in a second for anything you could want. This is also really useful for you Java developers out there, because I know how much you hate creating a new blank file and having to add the boilerplate. I love Java, got a soft spot for it. It's the first proper language I ever learnt, aside from C, but the less said about that, the better, really. So if you need to add boilerplate code, this generate code is amazing. Why don't you see if you can generate some Flask code to build a simple website and get it running? You have a time limit of 1 minute. I can't actually enforce that time limit, but you get the point. It'll be quick. The other thing is our old friend GUIs. Now there's a lot going on when you create a GUI, and especially if you have to use tkinter in Python, you are likely to have to write a lot of code, and even Ghostwriter's auto-completion can get a little bit laborious because you're pressing tab and tab and tab. Well, generate code takes the fuss of that out for you. Now if I ask it to generate a tkinter GUI with a splash screen, let's see what happens. There's a decent bit of code there. Let's put it in and let's run it and see what we get. If I maximize this window, we've got an emergency broadcast splash screen, and when we click the button, we end up at a new window. Now that's perfect. That is 2 states that I would have had to build myself and really think about how they coordinate. I've asked in a sentence for some code and produced a 2-page GUI in tkinter, which, I'll be honest with you, is a miracle in itself. I am no longer shackled to the world of GUIs and tkinter. Ghostwriter has freed me from it. Let's see if you can build a complex GUI in tkinter just by prompting it in generate code. What can you build? Data science and analysis of CSV files and big blocks of data is a common use case for a language like Python. I'm not an expert in this area, and when I need to generate graphs, it takes me a while reading the documentation to get it exactly as I want it. But let's see if we can do it in one line. I've put a file called data.csv in your REPL for you. I'm going to ask it to create a line graph of the data in that file for me. So there's 2 steps that I normally would have to build here. Read the CSV data in, organize it, and then build the graph. Okay, it's imported the right libraries. It all looks good. Let's insert it and run it. Well, immediately it loads the view and generates the graph. It's even got a heading, which we can of course go in and customize if we want. There's some great stuff going on here. This makes interpreting data and looking at things as simple as doing it in something like Excel, because if I've got the CSV file, I can prompt Ghostwriter to analyze and work that data in any way we want. It even works with things like pandas or NumPy to bring in that data and perform analysis if you ask it in the right way. See if you can get a graph going from that data.csv file in any way you want. It doesn't have to be a line graph. Experiment, go crazy. Are you learning a new API? Are you experimenting with something new? Recently, I was playing with the Spotify API, and let me tell you, Ghostwriter saved my bacon on a number of occasions there. But let's say that you were experimenting with the Twitter API. Well, rather than going to read the documentation first, we can even use Ghostwriter to get us started there. If I just ask it something as simple as, give me an example of getting tweets using the Twitter API, it'll create the code for us. Now, of course, we will have to go and provide our keys and our tokens because we do have to go and register for that with Twitter to get access to that. But that code there accesses the tweets via the API and shows them on the screen. That's a great starting point for anyone learning an API. And certainly if you try it with any API that you're currently working on, you'll get a lot of support and help, in exactly how to do certain things without needing those examples to already exist. See what you can generate API-wise by just using generate code. Try Twitter, try Spotify, try an API that you're interested in or that you've got a developer key for. It even helps you be artistic. Now, Python Turtle is something that we can use to produce beautiful illustrations, but going back and rereading all that documentation to get what I want is going to be difficult. I can simply ask it to use Python Turtle to draw something, in this case, multicolour circles. I get some code, I put it in, and I click run, and I've got a beautiful pattern straight away. Even the artist in me can be satisfied that Ghostwriter can help me produce beautiful pieces of work. Try and generate something yourself with Python Turtle. Maybe a beautiful picture like mine, or maybe a house scene, or something similar. Okay, your project today is a multi-step program. You can use generate code multiple times in the same file, and that's what I'm going to ask you to do today. First job, I'd like you to open and read the CSV file data, as we've done before, and turn it into a graph of your choice. I'd then like you to save that CSV file in a folder called public as a PNG file. Now importantly, if that folder doesn't exist already, you should create it. This is normally a really fiddly bit when you're working with the OS library, but hopefully generate code will make your life wonderfully easy. Once outputted, I'd like you to start a Flask server on port 0000 and serve up any images in that public folder to our users. This is quite a complex program using multiple steps and multiple specifically different ideas. Generate code should make this an absolute breeze. We've looked at all 4 features. So tomorrow we're going to have a project where I'm going to ask you to build something reasonably complex.